All right, so good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order on Monday, October the 3rd. It's about 6:04 p.m. So in accordance with the requirements of the open meeting law, please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast over the Lunenburg Public Access channel, and the recording of this meeting will also be available on the Lunenburg Public Access YouTube channel within 24 hours. The agenda lists all the topics which may be discussed at the meeting and those reasonably anticipated by the chair. Votes may be taken as a result of these discussions. Not all items listed may in fact be discussed, and other items not listed may also be brought up for discussion to the extent permitted by the open meeting law. Public participation is encouraged, and public comments may be welcomed during committee member discussions at the discretion of the chair. And so again, we're calling tonight's meeting to order. I am present, Micah Ray Jeffries. I see we also have Tom Gray with us, David Blatt, Greg Roy. And so we are going to constitute a quorum. So far this evening, we are missing Christina Masitis, Brian Leighton, who did inform us that he will be about 30 minutes late tonight. And then also Mr. Allison is not present. We do have Tony Scullin-Brini, our representative from APDC, who is kind of a de facto member of this group. He is also here with us this evening. All right, so going ahead and getting started, do we have any public comments this evening from the public? That would be you, Mr. Franco, so seeing none. Public comments, do we have any public comments from Mr. Scullin-Brini?
None this evening.
All right, and any from the other members of the board this evening? No. Okay, so where we left off with was we were talking about, so tonight's agenda should be relatively light. We are missing several members. So my intent tonight generally is to go through the scenarios that we identify, those three scenarios, to talk through, kind of a hybrid option perhaps, to just do a brief review of how we're going to, what the criteria is for program prioritization, and then to discuss our joint meeting with the select board, which will be next Tuesday. So next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. That's the time of the appointment. So it is a bit late, only because we're in the warrant season, and so I know there's a lot on the agenda this meeting and next meeting with the different groups that have warrants that are going before the special town meeting. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and pull up where we left off on the three use ideas, and based on formatting, let me see if I can adjust the screen here so we're not. Yeah, we'll see the hybrid that I put together as well, which seems to be kind of a logical hybrid, but I'll walk you through that. Let me go ahead and share. All right, looks like there was an update here, so the buttons down below are different. Here we go. And let me know if you can see this okay.
I can see it.
Perfect. So the three ideas, concept 1, 2, I also changed this from ideas to concepts, and just to update the verbiage, and then also the hybrid concept. So and highlighted here is kind of the locations of town hall. So concept number 1 is looking at future town hall being at the TC Passios, demolishing the north wing, renovating the kitchen and gym, keeping PAC, and then identifying their cost contribution. Town hall would serve as a community building, which the second floor is preserved as the primary meeting room. Ritter building in this example, in this concept, functions as a school administrative offices. Brooks House, looking to sell or demolish the Brooks House, and 30 School Street, looking at green space. The other notes, school programs that are currently in TCP would move over to the schools. And then our notes on considerations and cost implications, that we have some costs related to PAC Studio, duplicate control room, require ANR, which is approval not required for subdivision of a lot. Cost implications, significant renovation of TCP, renovation of Ritter to add, I put to add floor to ceiling, to add floor to ceiling walls, or rooms with privacy. Let me just update with some hyphens here. Or drop ceiling, HVAC, hazmat abatement, and then unknown what's needed at the Brooks House. And the concept number 2, and this idea, TC Passios functions for school programs and transition space, and really is being preserved as a future site for Turkey Hill or for additional school fields. Town Hall would function similar to the first example. Ritter Building would function as the new Town Hall with an annex to Ritter for town offices. That Brooks House functions to, in this example, to lease to business, lease as a house, which would require ZBA variance, perhaps a PAC studio, to demolish and convert to athletic building for seniors, Boys and Girls Club. So a lot of different options for what that can become. 30 School Street would be green space and parking. And then considerations, no guaranteed studio for PAC, no long-term community gym, duplicate control room, no food pantry. The parcel, TCP Passios parcel would revert to school custody and control. Also, for cost implications, we've noted hazmat abatement, unknown at the Brooks House, patching the roof at TCP, remodeling the first floor of Town Hall, a Ritter expansion of approximately 3,500 square feet. Concept number 3 is transition space, then community center for TCP, and then demolishing the north, central, and part of the west wings, creating a small office and community rooms, having a pantry, renovating the kitchen and gym, and then a PAC studio. And this would all function in the west wing of TC Passios. Town Hall would function the same as for meeting rooms. Ritter Building would function for school administration. Brooks House, school storage, town storage, school and town storage, and town facilities department. 30 School Street would be the location of the new town hall. And then other, we have programs are going back to the schools and or Ritter considerations, costs related to PAC studio, duplicate control room, another require A&R for subdivision of the lot, and may provide additional parking and fields. And then cost implications here, we have hazmat abatement, unknown Brooks, engineering triggers to avoid level 3, that we had site development and new construction, Ritter renovation, remodel first floor of Town Hall, and then Brooks House renovation, likely a costly option. So after our last meeting, I went through and looked at all 3 options and said, well, what option has the least things that, what option could be a hybrid that can meet some of these needs that aren't being addressed by any, by these 3 concepts. So to walk you through this hybrid, so it's borrowing from concept 3, the idea of what to do with TCP with a little bit, I think there's a little bit more here. Let me just see where it's at. Town clerk storage. So what's noted here is same as concept number 3. That is a transition space, then a community center, demolishing the north central part of West Rings, and creating a small office and town clerk storage. And then a pantry, renovating the kitchen and gym, and then PAC studio, and then also adding in here public bathroom and parking. That if the building becomes a community center, that there would be still that need for public parking for the athletic event. So that's something I added in as a hybrid here. That town hall, this is very similar to what we've decided on previous, but the difference would be that we would use it as the official meeting house. Maybe that's the name we want to use. That the first floor would be comprised of 3 meeting rooms. That the second floor would be mostly the same, except that we would eliminate the town managers, what's currently the town manager and HR offices, just to increase the size of that room back to the original, and then utilizing the rest of that second floor. So first town hall, minimal changes, really just turning that first floor, those offices into small meeting rooms, calling the whole thing a meeting house. Ritter Building, that this would function as a new town hall, similar to concept number 2. And that the Ritter and second floor and basement for school administration and ACE, and then current planning department, what's currently the planning department and my concept would function as the bridge or the shared room to go into the new two-story town hall annex of approximately 3,500 square feet. right in front of the building and to the side of the building. So that was the idea there. That Brooks House, borrowing from concept number 3 for school and town facilities for the Brooks House, and then borrowing from concept number 2 for what to do with 30 School Street, that there would be the need for more parking and green space, and then keeping the same, that school programs would go into other areas. So basically the hybrid is mostly a variation of concept number 2 with some add-ons from concept number 3. So I wanted to pull that together because I see in here that some of the concerns like Pack Studio, that we're eliminating that with this hybrid, and that the Ritter expansion, I put in here 4,000 square feet, but I think the idea is 3,500 to 4,000 square feet. So what are our thoughts on the concepts? Do we want to discuss this hybrid, adopt it, change it? I was kind of trying to go for like a best case scenario here. But what are our thoughts? Dave, you're not usually one of few words.
I was letting others join first, but I feel like the biggest, I like the idea of how we've incorporated the community center. I do like the idea of keeping all town offices together, together in one building. And I feel like the biggest challenge we have is for Town Hall and Brooks House right now.
Yeah.
So hybrid, I do like, I like the hybrid idea because I do feel like Passios will be needed as a transition space as they figure out what they're going to do with Turkey Hill.
Yeah.
And I hate to see us start to do something with that and then have no place for Turkey Hill. Well, for the students.
All right, great.
In the hybrid, Michael Ray, where would New Town Hall be?
It would be the Ritter building. So basically it would be an add-on to the Ritter building.
Tony, I don't know if you saw one of the reports that's was done. What do they call that? Whatever the name is of the reports, but there was a report done that showed, based on the needs of Town Hall, they can do an annex in the front of Town Hall and just do a small addition, and that's all you would need to house the rest of the town offices.
But wouldn't we be moving part of the town offices by moving the town facilities into Brooks?
That they're not they're presently in a basement room of Ritter. They just have one. It's just a single person right now.
But that person would then go over to the Brooks house. Is that correct?
Correct, but I wouldn't call the basement. I don't know the last time you were in the basement of Ritter, but I wouldn't call that really that would be a major renovation there to make it a real office.
So sorry, I don't want to cut you off, Tony.
I'm done.
Okay. So this option, the hybrid option, would basically entail pretty significant renovation of all 4 of the buildings. So TCP, current town hall, Ritter, and Brooks. So obviously there'd be some significant phasing that we would need to do, but I think that's part of the plan anyway. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea. I like the idea of, so just kind of moving left to right. I think I think so. Basically, TCP under this basically becomes a community center. I see it. Yeah, and I mean, in concept, I think that's a good idea. I just still wonder if I realize that we could do this all all decade long, but I really wonder what the legitimate options are for upgrading upgrading the Turkey Hill School. Which is probably going to hit us in 5 to 10 years or something. I just would hate to, that really remains my biggest concern. I'd hate to get down the road and then realize we need to use that space for a new building or for transition space for that project. And again, I say that my initial comment is important. I realize we can't, at the end of the day, we have to cut that discussion off at some point. We can't, we certainly can't look out 20 years, right? So we have to figure out a time horizon here. But if we really need to do something with the Turkey Hill School in say 5 years, I don't know what it is. I'm not sure, and we're reasonably confident that, that using the TCP space is will emerge as a good option for that school. I think that needs to weigh fairly heavily in our decision. But putting that aside, I don't have any significant concerns with this other than with the hybrid option, other than, it definitely does require the pretty significant renovation or addition of all 4 of those buildings. And generally speaking, I'm in favor of stuffing Brooks House in a dumpster. I will say that out loud. I'm not going to pull any punches on it. I know it might make people angry, but I just don't know that there's anything really worth saving in that house. But in concept, I think the programming looks good on this hybrid option. I think the challenge would be just figuring out how we're going to phase it from a cost consideration standpoint.
Okay.
I have a question about the Brooks House. How did the Brooks House end up being what it is today?
Yeah,
I actually asked this question at the planning board meeting that I attended last week. And it's like, and this seems to be kind of a symptomatic problem that the town has, is that it seems to want to keep buildings and not really transition them to different functions. What I had heard from the planning board was that it was the home of the land use director, Adam Burney, and his predecessor. I was surprised to learn that the Brooks House once upon a time was the Lunenburg Ledger office. And then, of course, it was used by the school superintendent. But one of the questions that I've asked, and I'll ask this group if they know, is how did we end up creating a library with kind of an old dumpy building next door to it without having a real plan for its continued use and continued maintenance? I mean, how did that happen? I've looked for records regarding the like, how did the library end up and the new library end up where it is without the town addressing the long-term needs and use for the Brooks House. Greg, I don't disagree with you that the house and the facility as it stands today is kind of a dog, but I don't want to create new dogs. I don't want to create a new dog in town hall. And I'm not sure that taking the Ritter building, which we didn't want to use as a modified or remodeled library, and turning that into, a new town hall. It's like, I sometimes think if you go back and you look at the history of the decision-making process, that you might find that there's some hints as to how you should proceed for the future without continuing to make a mistake of creating really unused facilities that don't have a long-term function. So does anyone know, how did the Brooks House?
Yeah, Greg, do you want to take this one? You look like you're ready to.
Yeah. My sense is I was a young buck back when the library was built. I was just moving to town, and I was didn't even have a family yet. But my sense is the reason why it was because it wasn't as bad then as it was today. and it was being used. So I think it was being used by probably at that era, I'm guessing that was the era that you were referring to with the land use department. When I joined the Conservation Commission in the early 2000s, we used to conduct our public hearings in that facility. So I think the real simple answer is that the reason why it wasn't taken care of is because it was in use. It was a building that was being actively used by the town at the time that the library was being built.
Yeah.
And but I can't tell you, I do not know at all how the library took shape. I'm not sure how that site was selected. I don't have any visibility in that at all. But my sense on Brooks House was that it was an active use at the time.
Yeah, and the library, the history of the library was that there was a lot of push and support for it. The library trustees were really engaged in that. Several librarians were as well, and so there was a huge push on their part to get a new facility. The way that we do facilities in town, is not usually how we're doing it now. Right now we're looking at multiple buildings to figure out a kind of a larger plan. But the way that we our charter, I'm not sure if it's the charter or the bylaws that dictate the process. I'm pretty sure it's the charter. And the process is that we create these kind of ad hoc committees that look at a building. And so it's not this kind of comprehensive thought process for how we move forward. There's also, and I know I've said this at our select board meetings, and I'll say it again here. It's also an element of this is about politics and what people want to pay for. People are very heavily invested in their children, and so when the town needs to do things for kids, I think the town steps up to the plate. And so, when you're talking about a new school, I think the town has done a good job of being there for these new schools. I think the same kind of thing applies to a library because, the biggest customer is our children. The biggest customers are children. And so you also have a lot of support there for that because it's dealing with the education of kids. The history of the Brooks House is that it did function as a superintendent's office for, I thought it was like over 2 decades. And it was probably 25 years or so that it functioned as a superintendent's office. And it wasn't until the TC Passios was vacated that the superintendent office moved to TCP, and it was in part because of an expansion within the district administrative offices that they needed more room, and they really had outgrown that building. So the town did authorize us, as I recall, to sell the building. We just can't sell the land.
Yeah. I think there was an RFP, maybe at least one or two to sell the structure, but
correct, and no takers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Surprise, surprise. No one wanted to move it down Mass Ave. So I think, that the school department's exit also corresponded with the opening of TCP because, when, somewhere around the time that we opened the new high school, I guess. When did we actually stop? Now I'm drawing a blank. When we stopped, none of my kids went to TCP, so it must have been quite a while ago that we stopped using TCP as an actual school.
I don't recall the year, but yeah. And there was some things on that one too, which was,
Oh yeah, we do, we moved, yeah. Anyway,
it's basically when the middle high school opened up, they moved.
It was but even before that, I think it was the 3 to 4 years before the middle high school, we made a major shift from either a 3 school to a 4 school or a 4 school to a 3 school. I can't remember what we did, but that was sort of to pave the path, I think, for the new middle high school project. And so that was a pretty significant change in the way that the school department was viewing their facilities. And I think that was when that all kind of happened. I can't remember the date. Pre-2016, I guess I would say, but I don't remember the date.
So this is Tom. After the the one thing that I'm learning from all this is that we have to, if you're going to learn from history, is you got to have a, when you're replacing a building or moving somebody out, you got to have a plan for that building that you're leaving. I mean, that's pretty much been everything that we've done. That's been our weakness. The old primary school is an example. TCP, maybe we consider that. The Brook House is another one. Even the Ritter, when it became no longer a library, it was, what are we going to do with it? It was more of an afterthought, I think, in some cases. So when I look at the hybrid, I do like it that it doesn't have another building. I think it's clear from what we talked about at our last meeting that, if we can avoid another building, there's, it's just another expense that we have, another, roof that needs to be repaired, heating systems and all that. So trying to limit the amount of buildings that we have, it is beneficial. Like Greg, I do agree that the Brook House, I will agree that it is probably not the best place for anything. It's an old building. It's going to be expensive. It needs a lot of work, including foundation work, which is going to be very expensive. So for me, I would say I would rather turn that, demolish it or sell it if we can. But on the other side, I would, we're still kind of kicking the can down the road with town hall. Meeting rooms or whatever we want to have, that's nice, but the reality is that we're just making up something to be there. We could do the meetings, we could do, we could have a space in other places. We could use the, one of the schools or something. It's, to me, the question will be is what we can find as a valued use of that. When times get tough, are we going to say, let's not fix the roof, let's not paint the building because we really don't use it much anyways. I think that's my biggest concern. But as long as the town is, and I think from what I understood from the last town meeting we had, was that the town really wants to keep the town hall at least as a presence in downtown, and it's willing to pay the expenses to maintain it, then the use is right there. I think maybe we could, if we have meeting rooms, maybe we could use it for some offices too. Maybe if there's, maybe the facilities could go in there. So I think we can talk about it, but I think the best thing is not to build a new building. I just think that's just, although it would be nice to have a brand new building that we can say that we built on our own, it's probably not the best use of our money.
Tom, I completely agree with what you said, is that and this is what happened to the Brooks House. We had other places, and then all of a sudden we're now spending money on the Brooks House and no one's really using it. And my concern is the same thing would happen to town hall. And I think the town hall, I think it's a really critical piece of infrastructure for the town of Lunenburg. Yeah. And while we can complain about how bad it is, I mean, the building has been standing since 1830. In fact, it got moved and it's still standing, here in 2022. That's not to say that you don't have to spend money on fixing it up, but if we're going to keep it as an option, whether it be concept 1, 2, 3 or the hybrid, then we're still going to have to spend money on it. And if we don't have a real driving need for it, it's going to become the future Brooks House or the future primary school for the town. And I don't think the voters are going to support that.
I think if just to clarify, part of the historical New England, before we got to town halls, we had meeting houses. That's the kind of historical building of our meeting houses, and that's where people would gather and meet. So it is a tradition that is very true to Massachusetts and New England. The second thing is, one thing that we're eliminating in all of this is we're eliminating meeting space. So right now we utilize meeting space in the Ritter building. There's 2 meeting rooms in the Ritter building. That both would be eliminated with the conversion of to a new town hall and school administration building. So it's relocating those offices to the current town hall, those meeting rooms rather, to the current town hall. And then also providing the second floor, which is utilized by several organizations. So I really don't see it as a lack of use or even a decrease in use. I think it's it would be a consolidation of, this is where all meetings happen at, is that they're all at the meeting house.
Now, are we talking about employees meetings, or, I mean, like, Bill, like, you know,
Municipal.
I want to get my department together and talk. I have to go to the current town hall to do that.
No, we're talking boards and committees.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So there would be a space in the Ritter for them to meet as a group.
And the hybrid
employees.
concept, yeah, we'd have to have some internal meeting space there for
Okay. But
for
just not a
staff.
big one,
Yeah,
like the
correct.
ones we have now. Okay, that's a better one. That helps me understand the concept.
I-
Thank you.
I gotta say, I actually like that idea a lot. So as I was listening to people speak, one thing's for sure, in my brain, there's no scenario that we demolish town hall or the Ritter. Right? There's just no scenario where we would do that. There's no support for it. Everybody wants them. So that means that we need to put some money into them to make sure that they're going to be here and not become a Brooks House or an old primary school, right? So I think I like the idea of transitioning the town hall into a meeting house. I think it's a good idea. We already have the telecommunications network here. I think it would serve, I think we could do a really good job at that. And you could use it for, municipal meetings. It's already being used that way. We have the infrastructure for it. And, we need, like I said, we need to renovate it significantly to make sure that it's, we need to make sure it's structurally sound. We need to, do more than just paint it. We need to, really put some energy into renovating it. And I think that this option would address that and allow for that. And it would become a use of that building that would be, it would be address a real need in town. And then it would also, I think, by the way, allow us not to build such a huge addition to the Ritter building. So, you now wouldn't have to accommodate, the 3 to 4 public meeting spaces that were built programming into the TCP renovation. Yes, you need some conference rooms, and you need some spaces where we can have some, small group or staff style meetings, or maybe even a public meeting in a pinch, but you don't have to do a full, program in, meeting space for public hearings. Those could all be conducted at town hall, which I think is a really good use for it. So I really like that concept, that part of this hybrid concept. I think that's a good concept.
Thanks,
Greg, would you hold the Lunenburg Municipal Design Committee meeting in the revised meeting facility at Town Hall? I mean, the fact that there are so many committees that have gone to Zoom meetings because it's a whole lot more efficient, to do this the way we're doing it this evening. And my concern would be that there's going to be less of a demand for meeting space. I love the idea of spending money on fixing up Town Hall because I think it's a really valued asset for the town to have. But I question whether using it just for meeting space is worthy of the tax dollars that would have to be spent on the building. And we're evidence that meetings are being conducted much differently. I know the Conservation Commission does a lot of their meetings, via Zoom, not just because of the pandemic, but because it's more convenient for the members. And I think as time passes, and you have more members who are more tech savvy, like APDC does not meet by Zoom, but I think that's a function of the types of members that APDC has had, that they're not into the new technology, but that group's going to evolve as well. And, and just like the Brooks House, the utilization of the Brooks House became less important, and thus any money that you spend on it seems to be, not the appropriate thing for the town to do. So I question whether that meeting space is really going to be a long-term viable use for town hall.
So I agree with, can I speak to that, Mr. Chair?
Of course.
I agree with you, I think, to a point, Tony. I think meetings like we're doing tonight are really appropriate for Zoom. There's not a lot of public involvement. It's not a public hearing per se. It is a public meeting, but it's not a public hearing. What they do at the select board meeting and what we do at the planning board meeting and the conservation commission and the zoning board of appeals, like what's going to happen in a week or two, again at zoning board of appeals for the 40B on Howard Street. I do this every day of the week for my job. I present at these boards, planning boards, conservation commissions, and zoning boards. And those, I think those meetings are better done in person. I just don't see us ever losing an in-person format for those type of meetings. It's just, to have all the parties in the room interacting with each other, I just think is the way to do those meetings. I do think that meetings like this, or I'm trying to think here, the Green Communities Task Force meeting, or the meetings like that where you're not holding a public hearing. I think they work pretty well on Zoom. I'm just here to tell you that, in my opinion, I would much rather go and stand in the room to represent a project, particularly a project like Howard Street, where there's a lot of abutters and there's all kinds of different moving parts to the project like that, than do it on Zoom. I'm just not sure we're ever going to lose that. But I do agree with you, Tony, that I think that, we're definitely going to have a component of this moving forward. I just think that those more, the land use boards, in particular, and the legislative boards like the select board, I think, are always going to need a place to conduct in-person meetings.
I don't disagree with that.
The only other thing I'd add to that, Tony, is that why we meet in person is because we are legally required to. So there's been a suspension of Mass General Law since the pandemic started that is allowing us to primarily meet in a hybrid format. Our legislatures have had 2 years to change the laws, and they haven't. So where we're at is a suspension of Mass General Law, but by default, we have to meet, a quorum of the board has to meet in person. So we need Mass General Law to change to allow for these fully hybrid meetings to continue. I believe right now the suspension expires next spring. And so, we need a legal change, or we're required to meet in person. And the only exceptions are, when you are out of the, there's like a list of reasons why you're allowed to join remotely, but convenience is not one of them.
Well, and it can also, under normal law, you cannot use it to form a quorum.
Correct.
So, you can have a remote participant or two, but you can't use it. You can't use those participants you can't rely on those participants for a quorum. So,
yeah. So I think some of this is planning for what is, but I don't, one of the comments that was made at a town meeting that I don't entirely disagree with, is that, how much of what we're doing, how much of the work that's happening even needs to happen inside of a building. That given where we're at right now with a lot of people working remotely, can a lot of these town functions occur remotely? That question's been posed to the town manager. The town manager is adamant that we do not create hybrid or remote staff positions. I think there was a feeling of a loss of capability. It's also about records and record storage and personal information. A lot of the things that town staff do has everyone's names and phone numbers and addresses on them, and that not having that stuff at people's homes. So there is I hear you though, Tony, and I hear your point. I'm not sure that we can plan to accommodate what needs to be changed in Boston.
I'm not disagreeing with the need for meetings in person. That building's been used for meetings in person even through the pandemic. And, but my concern is that enough utilization of town hall for the voters to want to support renovating it and then paying for continued maintenance? That is the point that I raised.
Yeah.
Well, Tony, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to it as far as it is a beautiful building, like the Ritter building. People see it. It is something that I think the town has shown its desire to maintain. I agree with everything that's being said. I do agree that maybe in 5 or 10 years, the town, the meeting room might not be the best use anymore. We don't know what the future holds. So like anything in any kind of organization, we have to wait for the future to come and plan once we know what's going to happen. So it might be in 5 or 10 years, we're talking about the town hall again as, well, what are we going to do with it? Because it doesn't meet the needs or whatever. On the other hand, the Ritter building, if we do make that into the town hall, the town is growing. So maybe in 5 or 10 years, we might be saying, oh, we're busting out of seams out of the new Ritter building with the annex. And maybe we use some of that space for a couple of departments. I think all those are yet to come. I think we have to plan for what we know today and what we think we will know for the next 5 years, maybe 10, and then move on, because the future is so unknown. We can spend all day talking about what we think, but it's really, we got to deal with the now and then the recent recent future.
Yeah, Mr. Franco, do you want to give us a preview of some of your thoughts so far and what you're hearing?
Thank you for inviting me to do that. I really just kind of wanted to dive into this meeting just to sort of see what was happening. I admit I haven't been glued to every one of these meetings by any means, but it's sort of a check-in for me. And I kind of wanted my head around these options before the joint meeting next week. I like the hybrid idea. I do like, I like all of them from the perspective of they envision, if I think I have that right, they envision uses for Ritter and Town Hall, that those buildings are not going to just rot. At least theoretically, they're being accommodated, is what I'm trying to say. And like I've said to you previously, Michael Ray, just privately, just in general, I will chain myself personally to either the Ritter or the Town Hall before it gets torn down. I think those are important buildings. The idea of sort of after the price tag of renovating TC Passios came in at like whatever it was, like 26 million or something like that, and that became sort of a non-starter. The idea of putting an annex onto Ritter and making that town hall became very attractive to me. So I like that. But I hear the concerns that Tom has expressed, and also I believe Tony, about making sure that town hall, there's enough envisioned use that it's going to justify renovating it, maintaining it, et cetera. And maybe it's something in addition to, offices, meeting space. Maybe there's some in here community rooms. I don't know exactly what you have in mind for that, but maybe it's something where there are things, events hosted in there too, like the arts or something like that on a periodic basis. Maybe it's rented. I don't know. Rented space on a per diem basis or something. But I like that. I like all the work that's gone into this very much. There's clearly a lot of thought has gone into it, and I think it is. To me, just my impression is that sort of some kind of hybrid is the best way forward. So, whatever that's worth.
Hey, I appreciate that, Mr. Franco. Any other thoughts? I mean, it sounds as if from what Mr. Gray has said, what Mr. Roy has said, is that the hybrid is perhaps our preferred option here. But I just want to get a feel for what you think as well, Dave, before I say that.
I mean, I personally, I know that there's a lot of emotion in town hall, and I don't have the same. I look at it as it somehow I'm going from somehow it was a building that the church didn't want, and it's a donated building. I have difficulties in the fact that there's no parking there. How much usage can it be? However, as we talk about this thing, I also see that I don't want to have to pay for building new meeting spaces in other buildings if I don't have to, because the biggest thing we're finding is the expense per square foot. So anything I can save with square footage in a new build would be very much appreciative. So my feeling is that as the town sentiment is that town hall has to stay, and whatever we do with it, there is going to be a renovation for that. And then on that same thing, that using it as a meeting room, whether it's for town meetings, if the church is talking about selling their second building, so that might be something that the Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts now need a meeting room and things like that. I do believe in adding more community spaces is imperative in this town, and I'll leave it at that.
All right.
I just have one other quick thing. As far as the hybrid goes, we're assuming that the school committee is not going to want to use the space for where TCP is for a building. And I think if we go down that road, and we start to, that's where we go. And the school committee hasn't made those decisions yet on what they want to do. I think we need to make sure that that's communicated. I'm sure it will be, but it might mean that they need to tear down the old Turkey Hill and then put them in, mobile units and for a while until they build a new one. But that's the kind of, it's not impossible, but that's the reduction of options that they'll have if we use the hybrid.
Yeah, I did speak with Carol Archambault, who's the chair of the school committee, about that, what their plans were, and what and this was a conversation we had last week when we did a walkthrough of some sidewalks around town as part of their request for more funding for sidewalks. And one of the questions was about this. And her response to me was that the school committee is waiting in line, that they would like for the town to resolve its building concerns first, and then they will tee up a plan for Turkey Hill, that they are not looking to get ahead of this. They want this to be resolved first. So, and that's some good news, because I think I was a little concerned last week that we were going to be having a competing school project against this, at which point I would say we might as well stop because the school project's going to happen.
So is there no clock on, is there no time clock on Turkey Hill then?
I think that, I don't want to speak out of turn, and I'm going to stop screen sharing on this one. I don't want to speak out of turn. I think, Turkey Hill is a building that is about 57 years old. And so, based on the state's guidance about the life of schools, it's at or nearing the end of its life. I also understand that when Turkey Hill was built, that part of the thought was that it was designed for modular expansion. And so I think there's a need to look into some of that history there to see, well, what was that modular expansion intended to be? I want to correct something that was said earlier. I don't think the town has a problem figuring out what to do with its old buildings. I think the town has a problem figuring out what to do with its old schools. And I think it's not so much a town problem as much as it is a town problem, but it's really related to schools. This property was transferred from the school department at their request to the care and custody of the town. And the vision was that even if they had additional school needs, that there were no needs at the TCP lot itself. I've talked to the chief of police. I think, he has a lot of concerns about traffic, putting another school with only those entrances that currently go in and out of there, even adding a third one. It's still all traffic consolidated into one central area. So I don't know what's going to happen with TCP, but I have reservations about the site being used for another school, because I don't have children in the school system. I don't see these school lines very often. But when I saw them the other day, I don't know how you throw a third school in the mix. Turkey Hill is thankfully around the corner. But if it wasn't, we would have a lot of real traffic problems. So I don't, but I know it's always better to build on new land. So I don't have an answer to that. Greg, my opinion is that if there's a way forward to be able to reutilize, and speaking kind of something that I know, Greg, you and I have talked about previously, if there's a way forward that allows the town to easily occupy Turkey Hill, which to me is an easier conversion than TCP would be, for town and municipal uses, that would be great. And I think that it's a building that could last us for a very long time. But then we run into the problem of Ritter Building and Town Hall, what to do about those buildings. Then we run into the fact that we're demolishing a TCP to make room for another. So I don't know if it solves enough for us.
Yeah.
I think if we didn't have these other schools in the background, if those were resolved when the new schools were built, I think it would be an ideal scenario for the town. But without that, and just another side note about parking. So even though we're a municipality and we can kind of skip out on a lot of the rules ourselves, personally, I don't think a lot of that's fair, but I know that we can. One of the hardships is change of use, is that if we change the use of town hall significantly, we're going to have problems meeting our own requirements for a certificate of occupancy, because we don't have parking. And so
That's a very good point.
so there is a need to kind of keep the usage there similar.
That is a good point.
All right.
Isn't the parking in front of the Boys and Girls Club, the towns, or is that?
It is.
Okay.
And the town, to be clear, the town has given itself the ability to say that so long as parking is within, I believe it's a half mile, so long as the parking is located within the center district, it's good. So, we can have a usage at town hall and have parking across the street over near 30 School Street. We can do that. But then that becomes limiting on what you can do at the Ritter Building, and in that area as well. So.
Yeah, that's a good point. Should we we're going to the select board next week, which I think is a good first step, but should we also go and meet with the other boards that form this committee? Should we extend it, at least a willingness to visit the school committee and the finance committee and the planning board?
I think so. I think that would be a good idea, is to talk to the select board and then also to follow up with the different boards. Greg,
Yeah.
and Dave, how do we want to do these presentations?
Are you talking about for next week?
For next week and generally for finance, for school committee.
You want to do you want to do slide deck, or do we just want to present the matrix that we have here? I don't know if we're really slide deck worthy.
Yeah, I think it's matrix, but as far as, I guess I'm asking who wants to present.
So I have a 7 o'clock public hearing in Lancaster next Tuesday. I honestly can't remember if that's a cattle call type thing or if I'm actually going to go on at 7.
Well, I think Dave's presenting to the select board.
I should be at the select board meeting, but I shouldn't. I could be a little late.
All right. So what do we think about meeting? I'm looking at you, Tom, as well. What are your thoughts about us reaching out to the finance committee, to the school committee, and to the planning board and requesting a meeting with them just to provide them an update on where we're at? Or do you think we should have the representatives do that?
Well, at least the finance committee, I know their biggest concern will be, what's this all gonna cost, and, so on and so forth. And we're not there yet, obviously, so that could be postponed until maybe we decide what, we're a little further on down the line and say, okay, we throw together some numbers, because that's what they're gonna be interested in more than, but I have been keeping them informed at the meeting on what we're talking about and so on. And I think I did send them a copy. I don't know if Michael, I can't remember if you sent me or sent us the spreadsheet that you had.
I did.
I think
I did.
if I did, then I sent it to them. So they had an older version of it, and I would, if you send it again, I'll probably send the updated version to them along with a little thing. So I don't think that's a biggie for them right now. Maybe once we get some numbers, that's when it could be. But the other committees, I don't know.
I think planning board would be good conversation.
I think both. I mean, honestly, I
That's cool.
for two different reasons. I think the school committee, we're programming space for them or lack thereof in this plan. So I think, it's only fair for us to involve them. And the planning board, I think they're the board that we have in town that has the name planning in it. I think that we should solicit their feedback. So
All right.
I think it'd be a good idea.
I will reach out to,
Actually, Michael Ray, can we first have it that the representatives, I mean, we do have a representative from each one of these on there.
Yep.
That they report to their own boards with the question of, do you want this
Would you
board
like-
to, would you like us to
Right.
give you more details?
I agree with
Because, because I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm not personally excited about, I know some of you guys enjoy presenting to boards and going to board meetings all on your week, but that's not my thrill in life. Let's put it that way.
Well, I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, if I'm available, I'll present it. I love it.
Okay. Yeah.
Just, I got so many other meetings.
Yeah, I know you love I know my family loves me so much they keep encouraging me to go to board meetings,
No,
So what I'll do is,
I think you're right. I think we just make ourselves available. If they want us to go, I think, I think we should go. But if they don't want us to go, then obviously that the story closed. But
yeah, I'll reach out to Matt and Brian, who aren't with us tonight, and I'll let them know. I'll reach out to both of them and just discuss it over with them and make sure that we make ourselves available to meet with them. I can also attend as a representative, so that way it's not a full joint meeting. And I mean, I think I have this week for me, it's Monday through Thursday at night. I have town stuff. So this is gonna be a heavy week for me. So I know it becomes a bit much I know it becomes a bit much, especially if you're not in an elected role and you just kind of signed up to volunteer and then get pulled into a whole bunch of stuff. So I will reach out to Matt and Brian about that. We'll follow up with them and then see if, and we'll go from there. All right. It sounds like on the hybrid option that we're prepared to discuss this, Dave, next week with the select board. So we can, I will provide it to them in advance of the meeting. Typically, because of open meeting law stuff, they may not be able to get it until the day of the meeting because it's coming from me.
I'm sorry, could you send it to me before then, just so I can have it and look at it?
So I'll be sure to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we run into complications when sending each other information in advance of meetings. So as a default, the select board always waits till the day of, right before the meeting, to send information from one member to the rest. So we don't run into any afoul of open meeting law, but it just slows everything down when you come up
Yes.
with an idea that you can't share it until the meeting. And then you got to schedule another meeting to talk about it. All right. All right, that puts us in a really good position. So we're prepared to talk about that. I'll make sure I send that out after the meeting to everyone for us to discuss. Let me just get back over to the agenda. Brian, thanks for joining in with us this evening. Just, I'm going to shoot this email out, what you're looking at when you're not looking at it. Let me send it to you via email here. Well, I'll send it after the meeting. We discussed kind of a hybrid option, Brian, and so I'll send that over to you after the meeting is over. So I mentioned at the very beginning that this should be a pretty brief meeting because really I wanted to focus on that task. As we talk about program criteria for prioritization, I mean, I think that we've kind of gone around the circle on this topic several times, and I think where we land is that we're prioritizing town, school, and community uses in that order. And we haven't had any real variation from that. So I don't know if there's any more prioritization that we need to do. I think that as we drill into the uses of the spaces, once we have a concept that we're all in agreement to, and then we start drilling it down even more, I think then we'll have other considerations at that time. But for now, I think our focus really is just school, town, and preserving community uses. We've already talked about us having this joint meeting with the select board. Again, it's next week at 8:30 p.m. It is a little bit late on the calendar on the day, just because, as I noted, the select board has a lot of meetings related to the warrant that for the special town meeting. All right, we did get some communication. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. We did get some communication related to space use. So I'm going to share my screen here and share the response we received from the superintendent's office. So let me just go ahead and open this one up. And can we all see this okay?
Yes.
All right. So this was the email from Dr. Burnham related to, let me minimize my margins here. All right. So bottom line here is the middle paragraph. School's going to require 256 square feet of on-site storage space and 448 square feet of off-site storage space. And
I read that. I had a question. Do they actually use offsite storage space now, or is that just something they could use, or is that the 448?
They don't right now, Tom. They just basically use a room in Passios.
Okay.
Yeah, I
So
think
it
that's
would be
the
an
issue.
expense to send it somewhere to Iron Mountain or wherever it goes.
I mean, one thing that we didn't mention in our hybrids, but I mean, if we get to a point where, we have a functioning town hall, and the basement has been dry for several years now, and we can, get some dehumidifiers down there at low cost. I think there is an option to put in some really inexpensive shelving units and make use of the ground that's there. I mean, it is dirt down there, so I'm not gonna pretend like it's not, but I think there's an opportunity to figure out as part of this process, what would it cost to get that space available for record storage. Again,
Could this be the use for the Brooks House? It's all of our off-site record storage,
it could be. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and share the response from the town manager. So town manager's email is a little lengthier. So we can, if you guys want to read through this, you can read through it. I did send this to you all via email, and I'm sharing it on the screen in case internet home is reading it. I'm gonna give you the summary. The summary is that there's more work to be done, and that the town manager can't give us an exact estimate at this time for what she's going to require for storage, that there is just a bit more that has to happen before she can provide that to us. And that's the gist of what this says.
What was interesting, Michael Ray, was that 330 boxes could either be digitized or destroyed. That's about 25% of the total amount of storage that she had in her control. And the project forced, that number to come forward. I think that's a really interesting thing to see, is that by forcing the issue of digitization, we've now realized that we've got a big chunk of stuff that had been in storage that doesn't need to be in storage, which was really, really interesting. It was also interesting looking at the other attachments that she sent. Basically, anything can be kept electronic as long as it meets the retention requirements that the state prescribes, which when you look at some of the amount of time that you have to keep these records is just insane. Like 20 years for building plans, that's nuts.
And something's in perpetuity.
Yeah, I mean, really crazy. But the other thing that was interesting is how if it comes in digitized, you can keep it digitized. And I think that's one of the things that we should really be striving for through this process, is to make the citizens' interaction with the town as digital as possible, so that we don't create a piece of paper that has to be stored in a box that we have to pay for. So
Yeah, Tony, I talked to Heather, the town manager. Her and I talk usually at least 2 to 3 days a week, sometimes more, and oftentimes more. But in our conversation today, we were talking about this, and I understand where her concerns are. Her concern is really number 5. That she has not, we have done kind of that cost benefit analysis pretty quickly to say, hey, it's going to be cheaper if it's stored somewhere else. I think the town manager still needs to conduct that analysis to come to the same conclusion that we did. So there is a question there, but something I said to her today was, look, if we hired someone for $60,000 a year and all they did for 2 years was digitize records, that would still be cheaper than building one room for record storage. And really the key is to get staff into a posture that everything is digitized, And so once you catch up on the backlog, that if we get ourselves into a better footing, then we don't have this backlog and everything is just digital going forward. And, I'm like, and something I commented on was, even though we, certain things have to be kept in perpetuity, that, once you have that digital format of it, does it really matter where that ink signature really is being stored at,
But by the way, Michael Ray, I got to make a comment here. So as the zoning board, right, we're sitting there and we just had a couple of hearings last week, and basically both of them produced D-size, E-size drawings. First of all, what the heck I'm going to do with it when I'm done with it. And the other one is that by the time I try to zoom in, if I had an iPad instead of a piece of paper, I could zoom in and actually read the damn thing half the time. And it's funny because it's looking at this thing and I'm looking at how many boards, how much does an iPad, does a Surface or an iPad cost these days? It probably costs more to generate the paper for that one meeting than it would have been to give us all iPads and give it to us all digitally. You know what I mean?
15 copies, Dave, to the zoning board of appeals.
Exactly.
That's what we have to produce, 15
Yeah.
copies of the application.
And by the way, how many get thrown out, right? 14
Yeah,
get thrown out. Yeah, go 14. What of them we got to keep,
It's 18 or 19 to the planning board, by the way. So
Exactly.
So.
And think about the planning board, how much storage Marjorie has to have just for those large drawings. It's not a simple thing to store, right? These are rolls. It's not like it's a piece of paper, you can stack it. So we got to figure out a way to get these boards away from paper completely.
I agree with you. I agree with you. It's as you mentioned that, I also speak to our state delegation usually every couple of weeks. So I talked to Mike Kushmarek this morning, Representative Kushmarek earlier today. So the next time we talk, I'm just making a note for myself to talk to him about digitization, because a lot of what we're doing is dictated by Mass General Law that just needs to be updated because it's 200 years old. So
probably take 200 years to get it updated, but that's okay.
The APDC is going to do the same thing we're gonna get rid of the request for 8 copies of drawings, which you can't read because they're so small, Dave. I've
Right.
had the same experience, is that we've got drawings and you need a microscope to see them. Whereas if they came as PDF files, I could blow them up on my Surface, which is exactly what you want to do.
Exactly.
We're gonna
Exactly.
change that. That's one of the things that's gonna get changed. And we won't, I don't think we have, it's in our guidelines, so it's not something that necessarily needs a town meeting vote. So, I don't want eight pieces of paper. I want to see one set of drawings on a digital format that I can then read at my pleasure and my leisure.
I can tell you though that Lunenburg's not the only town that
Yep.
is still, there's a few towns that have really embraced electronic, and we only have to, even in those towns, we still have to submit some paper copies, but it's not 15. It's maybe 1 or 2 for the file. But it's, from a consultant standpoint, everything we do now is electronic. We produce everything electronically. If we need to produce it by paper, it's just we hit the print button on the electronic record that already exists. But we do not file anything in paper anymore. Everything we do is electronic, backed up on multiple cloud servers. And if it would be good from just to give you, it would be great if the towns would follow suit, and the state, and the state law would follow suit with that, because it's just it's a waste.
Yeah, I'm with you, Greg. 100% of what I do.
We buy plotter paper by the pallet load, literally, and it's just like, why we do this? Like you can read, like you've all said, you can read it better on an iPad or a tablet. So
yeah. Okay, so we did get those responses again from the superintendent. They're pretty straightforward. On the school side, I translate Heather's response to "I need more time," and so I hear her on that one. All right. And then anything from you, Brian, on social media engagement, from any of the posts that you've made related to our meetings or any of this discussion?
No, not a lot of engagement. I think the hope is that we get more public to come to our meetings though. I posted the meeting and the hopes more people will come.
Okay. All right, so I think we are at an ending point here today. Again, the focus really was to make sure we're all set for our meeting next week to walk through these scenarios. It looks like we have 3 good scenarios, a hybrid for discussion with the select board. Next steps, Brian, we do have a question for you, which is we would like to make sure that the school committee and planning board and finance committee, but we know finance committee is taken care of. We want to make sure the school committee and planning board are aware of these options, that the concepts that we've come up with, these 3 kind of primary and then the 1 hybrid. And if you can discuss that with the school committee and let me know if you'd also like for me to come and discuss it with them as well. What makes the most sense to you? For me to plan to meet with the board and discuss it with them, or for you to discuss it and for me to follow up if there's questions?
I guess my thought would be to reach out to Carol. I feel like if you directly reach out to Carol, I think that's a good starting point. I know the school committee is meeting on Wednesday, but I don't know if it's going to be in time for the agenda to be adjusted, but
yeah,
planning to meet on the 19th as well.
Yeah, maybe the 19th. I have the select board, even though we have a site walk scheduled for Wednesday at 5:30, I think. We're walking some property in Whalum. So
yeah, I think talking to Carol, I think we'll get an idea when she wants to see it on the agenda too as well. I think that would be a good place to start.
All right, sounds good. All right, for old business, any agenda requests, action items? All right. Let's see, we should have some minutes for approval here.
I don't think we do.
Well, you would know, Brian.
Yeah, so I didn't send any.
Yeah, I'm on your emails when you send them to the town clerk's office.
Yeah, I did let them know that we had approved some minutes. I was working on the August 29th. They're not done yet. But the August 1st, I could not find the YouTube there. I was trying to find the YouTube on August 1st. So I don't know if you could reach out to the the town of Lunenburg access and see if they have that YouTube. I did not see it posted August 1st.
Yeah, that may be the meeting we forgot to record.
So I'm shy on notes on that one. If people have good notes from the August 1st meeting.
Okay. And I'm pretty sure that was probably the meeting that we somehow the recording stopped, because I think it was 3 meetings ago or so that happened.
That would be
Okay.
it.
All right, Brian, if you wouldn't mind just floating around even the light notes that you have when you're able, I think we can, I know we don't get a lot of feedback generally to minutes, but we can all try to deliberately look at them and see if we remember
good.
something and add to it.
Yeah, I'll request some feedback. Thanks.
Okay. Future meeting schedule, we have this coming next week on Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Mr. Blatt will be there. If you wouldn't mind letting me know, well, I'll just go ahead and post a double meeting. I'll post a meeting for us for that time in case we have a quorum. But again, it is at 8:30, the appointment. And Dave, if you're running late or if you can't make it, I can take it. I'll be there.
No problem. I my appointment in Boston, I should be done at 7.
All right.
7:30.
And then after that, we have a meeting on October the 17th. And then next meeting, we're looking at November the 7th. All right. Any public comments this evening from the public? Any public comments from APDC? Tony?
It's nice to know that there's a notable citizen who's willing to chain himself to town hall and really make sure that they don't get demolished. It's really, as a member of the APDC, it's really nice to know that that person exists.
That
The
you don't
fire
have,
department will
that you don't
get
have to
their
do it
hoses.
yourself.
I don't have to do it myself. I might have to do it at Brooks House, but I don't have to do it at Town Hall in Ritter.
I think if you change yourself to Brooks House, it would fall down around you.
I'll be down there by myself, I'm sure.
Oh,
I wouldn't wish that on you, but it probably would. Any public comment from the committee this evening?
I think you got it.
All right, so I will take, it is 7:21. I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Greg Roy, so moved.
All right, second.
Brian Leighton, second.
All right, and this is a roll call vote. I'll go by how I'm looking. Mr. Gray,
Aye.
Mr. Blatt,
Aye.
Mr. Scullin-Brini,
Aye.
Mr. Roy,
Aye.
Mr. Leighton,
Aye.
and an aye for myself. And again, I'm Michael Reed Jeffries. All right, you guys, it's 7:21. Enjoy the rest of your evening. I know I will, and I'll see you guys next week.
Sounds good. Talk to you then. Take care.
Aye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.